are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before.
The political establishment has been taking a thrashing.
That is not what democracy is about. That is what oligarchy is about.
And the voters are taking over.
You need to let me speak or I will shut it down. Get out of my face.
You know what I learned about Hillary? She's very corrupt. And she lied a lot. And that's it. We're done.
This hour, we'll look at how people are speaking out.
I'm gay, and I support Trump.
I don't want to have a beer with the president. I want him to go to work, fix our country.
And are moving this election down paths no one ever expected.
We have socialism for the rich. We want socialism for everybody.
White folks actually got to give up something. You have to actually sacrifice yourself.
The people united.
Announcing to the world that the presidential race is theirs to decide.
I'm behind Donald Trump 100%, and now Donald Trump is behind me.
Fox News reporting, voter revolt. And now, Brett Baer.
It's a presidential race like no other. Two rebel candidates racking up huge victories in the New Hampshire primary. Voters are sending a clear message. This election will not be business as usual.
Go, Danny, go!
Not that long ago, the path to the White House seemed pretty straightforward.
It looked like a regular election year. It looked like you had the dynastic candidates, Clinton and Bush.
I've got 40 on Jeb, front runner for sure.
Hillary Clinton is still a substantial favorite for the nomination.
I think we've had enough of the Bush family.
Very disillusioned with Hillary Clinton.
Both had the most money, the most endorsements, and for their parties were considered relative moderates.
Most people thought it was going to be a little bit like the last cycle where you'd have different people, sort of the flavor of the month, rising up, and ultimately they would cycle through and the sort of people, the Mitt Romneys of the world, would ultimately get the nomination.
On top of that, there were a lot of Republican governors whose executive experience might play well on the campaign trail. For example, Scott Walker, Bobby Jindal, Chris Christie. Which is perhaps why no one seemed to take Donald Trump, who had never held office and was best known as a TV celebrity,
So long. Go.
too seriously.
I am officially running for President of the United States.
In fact, comedians had a field day.
Hillary would be our first female president, and Trump would be our first Mad Libs president. I think that's the way it works. What is he saying?
Even when Trump polled well at first, most figured his popularity was a fad that would soon fade. And each time he said something outrageous, it seemed like the final straw.
When Mexico sends its people, they're bringing crime, they're rapists. John McCain, I like people that weren't captured. We're going to build a wall. Mexico's going to pay a complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Serious candidate would not do that. I don't see him going through with this. I think this is a stunt for attention.
The Republican Party is not going to nominate Donald Trump.
I will be voting for Trump.
Donald Trump actually has the ability to win.
Every one of his sort of outrageous statements, people would say, this will be the end of Donald Trump. And then he would rise in the polls, and he would do something else that was perceived by the political classes as outrageous. And people would say, this will be the end of Donald Trump. And he would rise in the polls.
Perhaps it was his take-no-prisoners approach. Perhaps it was his tough stance on immigration. Perhaps it was that the voters were fed up with politicians. Whatever it was, the political class eventually realized something. To their surprise, Trump was a serious candidate who had as good a chance of getting the nomination as anyone.
The rise of Trump, and he's now the strongest candidate, obviously, is a phenomenon you would not have expected. And it reflects the amount of anger and the desire for a change in the Republican, the conservative approach to what's going on in Washington.
Meanwhile, another anti-establishment candidate, Ted Cruz, who opposed Washington from inside Washington, won the Iowa caucuses.
Iowa has sent notice that the Republican nominee will not be chosen by the Washington establishment.
The way to earn the title of outsider, it helps if you call your own majority leader on the floor of the Senate a liar, but by his own sort of demeanor and actions, placed himself outside what he calls the Washington cartel. It's a clever way to go about it, and we'll see if it pays off for him.
Wow, wow, wow. So beautiful.
And then, of course, Donald Trump easily won New Hampshire. 2016 was not going to be like any other year.
So fresh out.
On the Democrats' side, the results once seemed even more assured. There was Hillary, and then there was the rest of the field. Most people couldn't even name them.
Today, I'm formally entering the race for the Democratic nomination for president.
Certainly, there'd be no competition from the septuagenarian socialist senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders.
Doesn't mean that there's really going to be a Sanders administration. I think that's absurd.
Bernie Sanders, while also will not become president, just like Donald Trump will not become president.
We really think Bernie Sanders is the candidate to kind of actually do the things that we care about.
We want a socialist, and we want a socialist government.
But once again, the voters revolted. Suddenly, the energy seemed to be in Sanders' camp. His rallies had to turn away people at the door, while Hillary had trouble filling halls. Her popularity in the polls started to erode week by week. So much so that Sanders did what was once unthinkable. He made socialism seem acceptable, at least in Democratic politics.
He may win, or if nothing else, the platform for the Democrats will change.
And then he essentially tied Clinton in Iowa and crushed her in New Hampshire.
The people of New Hampshire have sent a profound message to the political establishment, to the economic establishment, and, by the way, to the media establishment.
After New Hampshire, he's seen very, very seriously as he won virtually all demographic groups. If anything, they're voting for the real deal, the authentic candidate, Bernie Sanders, and that explains his 20-point-plus victory in New Hampshire.
Experts predicted Clinton would still have a firewall in the South, but New Hampshire made clear she can't take anything for granted. And that's why, with early winners like Cruz, Trump, and Sanders, the clearest loser so far has been conventional wisdom.
This anti-establishment feeling is true. I don't deny it. I think there's also a deep anxiety and malaise in the country from where Obama has left it. The Democrats won't say it, the Republicans do. This whole sense of American decline or retreat, I think, is what's animating a lot of the opposition.
Going into South Carolina, and Super Tuesday a few days after that, anything seems possible in the year of the voter revolt.